Okay, so speaking of Air, Air is just it's just an unbelievable film, and we all know this. And so the screenwriter, and I talked about this in the um, spoiler cast. So the screenwriter, okay, his name was Alex Convery, and he actually had put this on the blacklist. So the blacklist is something that is for potential screenwriters that are ideas that just have not been touched, okay, by screenwriters that like you or I or anybody that can put these on there. Now, um, so that being said, the screenwriter for Air was extremely, extremely nervous. And you say, why? Because he was awaiting Michael Jordan's blessing in writing this. And also how Viola Davis actually became the protagonist. So this came from Variety. Before Air could get the green light, Ben Affleck needed one last seal of approval. With months of development already complete, the director flew out to meet with Michael Jordan, seeking his blessing for the film, which explores the NBA's star's landmark 1984 sponsorship with Nike and the origin of the Air Jordan line. For screenwriter Alex Convery, this was the most stressful 24 hours of his career. He says, either this was going to either this was going to get made or this was and be my very first produced movie or it was all going to fall apart. Back at square one, he recalls in a conversation with Variety. To do this, to do to really do this responsibly, you really need Michael to say yes. Ben said in the first meeting. We will not do this movie if Michael doesn't want it to be done. Deja vu, waiting for a call that could change his life. Convery found himself in a situation that he had practically written in his own screenplay. Air culminates with a Hail Mary meeting between the Jordan family and Nike executives, led by scrappy Sonny Verasco, once again played by Matt Damon, who takes the wheel during the pitch by looking the then incoming rookie Jordan in the eyes and expounding about his generational talent, predicting a future of how it was going to come to elevate the sport himself. And by the way, that monologue was unbelievable. Anybody who's seen it knows what I'm referring to. Orozco's soliloquied idealism fades over the following days, waiting by the phone to learn if Jordan bought his agreement. Looking back, so much of what Sonny is saying is exactly how I was feeling as a stuck screenwriter, he laughs. Him saying, I have a feeling. I know this can be something. I'm the only one who could probably see it. But I do laugh. It is way too obvious. To get Jordan to visit Nike headquarters, Verasco goes behind a bunch of executives warning him to steer clear of the rising star, whose reputation is seen to be as too outsized for the Nike basketball division's slim budget. Like his protagonist, Conroy reveals that he went rogue in writing the screenplay for Air, chipping away at it in between writing gigs. Every once, even once he began, even once he began a shared finished draft, producers warned him that the project was unlikely to be approved by the necessary parties. I didn't tell my agent or my managers. I was doing it because I knew they would say, "Don't write it. Don't spec something you don't have the control rights to." Conroy had already learned this lesson the hard way after penning a script about the rising Marvel Comics and rivalry leaders Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. The screenwriter says his quote heart was in the blender end quote when the project couldn't find a way off the ground. Nevertheless, Conroy couldn't help himself. The writer grew up in the suburbs of Chicago during the 1990s, witnessing close up the unmatched fervor for Jordan and the six championship franchise dynasty. Reliving the Bulls' glory days was with the hit The Last Dance in 2020. That's how he found his creativity activated by an antidote in this series that details Nike's unlikely deal with Jordan. My version of what my version of right of what you know is what you're most passionate about, he says. I just saw the movie, which rarely happens. I never have good ideas, but it was just all there. I didn't want to write it because I had no one else that I had because but I had to because no one else knows that there's something here. Conroy understood that early on that Jordan's couldn't be an explicit character in the screenplay. The NBA star is a spectral presence in air, sometimes commercially so. The 21-year-old rookie can be seen walking into a business meetings, but always facing away from the camera with his head just out of frame. Jordan only speaks once in the film, and it's one word on the other end of the phone call. Now, I was fascinated about that because I didn't know if that was somebody else's voice or his. That's interesting. In previous interviews, Conroy had compared Jordan's narrative function to the sharks in Jaws, a looming force of nature that goes unseen. The less you know, the less of you show of him, the more powerful the idea of him is. Says the original spec script details the climactic cut to Jordan's face during Verasco's speech to him, but the idea was promptly scrapped. To Ben's credit, for the first time we sat down, he was like, "You have to pick you one or the other." The minute the headline comes out of which actor is going to play Michael Jordan, that will only be the story of the movie. Instead, Air finds this conduit for the Jordan family in Viola Davis, who portrays the star's mother, Dolores, and she was unbelievable. A woman carefully navigating the onslaught of businessmen, judging which parties will actually pay the value they see in her son. In the, by the way, this may, I'm saying now, this may have spoilers in it. So if you guys haven't seen it, I should have put that. I didn't read this all the way through. In the film's climax, Dolores calls Verasco out to prove the deal, provided that Jordan receives a fraction of the revenue for all Nike products featuring his name and image. Verasco is deflated at first. It's not even that he disagrees with the principle, it's a sponsorship deal that simply has not worked like that before. Um, okay, there's not too much left, so guys, bear with me. It's only another minute or so. Knowing the Jordan family gets their due at the end, I just felt like that it would shine through than the idea of the executives at Nike. It's the Jordan family that has the final victory, Conroy says. The way that Ben puts it is Dolores suddenly becomes a protagonist. The guy you thought you were rooting for the entire movie suddenly becomes the guy you're rooting against. Conroy, there are mixed emotions for his first produced screenplay coming to fruition as the Writers Guild of America prepares for a potential strike. The screenwriter calls it renewed WGA contract, quote, long overdue. The ultimate triumph of Air is watching an athlete receive rightful compensation for a product with his name on it. As negotiations continue between the WGA and major studios, Conroy's sentiment is that writers are only seeking the same. The business has been changing under our feet for a long time. The way writers are compensated is not reflected in that change, he says. There are writers that are going to be affected by this more and less than others. That's the painful part of going into any battle. Not everyone is going to be affected equally, but all of these places are profit driven. If they could cut us out now, they would. It's the power of the guilds. We've gotten as far as we have now. As Dolores looks out for her son while negotiating Nike, Converse sees this labor rally among WGA members as a necessary, deserved investment in the future. William Goldman does not have any health care. It's crazy. Patty does not have any health care. I wouldn't either if these people before me, who didn't know me and probably never will, didn't go on strike. Here we are, and we're ready. Thank you guys for bearing with me while I read that whole thing. I didn't think it was that long. But, um, so let me just get to your comments real quick, Kyle Kobe. You've been waiting so patiently here. I watched it yesterday and it was a good commentary. Yeah, no, oh, thank you. You watched the spoiler cast. Thank you about that. Yeah, no, I wanted to put as much context and everything else into it because it's one of those things that I think it's not only important for everybody to see, okay, because of the shoes and everything, but how sports are changed. This isn't, you got to understand, this is not Jerry Maguire. This is the only, this isn't Moneyball. And I think that's important to really understand because those two films were about the big picture of the sport, right? Um, Yeah. So I think that when you have something like that, um, and it's just about a person, you know, we need more movies like this, Air and Elvis, that explain stories with new actors. Like, imagine if we got a Michael Jackson movie. So, interesting point about Michael Jackson. And I could be wrong about this. I believe they're developing a Jackson film. It's very, um, it's in its early stages right now. They don't know what the story would be or how it would be or whatever else, but they are developing one. And to your point about, things like this, you got to remember musical biopics for the past 7 years have been huge. Okay. Whether it is A Star is Born, even though that wasn't a biopic per se, whether you have Rocket Man, whether you have Bohemian Rhapsody, whether you have Judy, whether you have Elvis, all of these things are starting to come into fruition. And it wouldn't shock me. As a matter of fact, um, they are actually in development right now. So James Mangold is actually developing a film about Bob Dylan. And Bob Dylan, of course, is a legendary artist, is going to be played by Timothée Chalamet. And he's going to be doing his own singing. So that's going to be fascinating when we get more on that. So I'd like to see that. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But this is so getting back to what he was saying about air. It's interesting that he makes a correlation. Okay, but it's also fascinating to see how you know it was. He wanted to get Michael Jordan's blessing, and I tend to agree with because I mean, look, I have an idea for a spec script for Rounders 2. It's called All In. I have the idea, but I could never get the rights. Okay, because of everything. Um, all that being said, this was incredible. I love how they were able to put Viola Davis in that protagonist role. She was amazing as Dolores. The whole movie was just, and it doesn't seem like 2 hours. And we talked about this, and it's just, it made $20 million. So it's gonna really, really, really be good. Um, so I'm interested in seeing that. What do you guys think? Have you seen Air? If so, how many times? What did you think of it? Do you own a pair of Air Jordans? If so, or which Air Jordans are your most favorite? Let me know down in the comments and we'll get back to everybody.